On this edition of the In Studio podcast, we're here at Sabina Park speaking to Mr. Jackie Hendriks, a West Indies icon. I'm Gregory Lopez, and thank you so much, Mr. Hendriks, for agreeing to do this interview. I should refer to you officially as Mr. John Leslie Hendriks.
Jackie is all right.
But everybody knows you as Jackie Hendriks, obviously. And of course, you represented the country and the region with distinction. Mr. John Laggy of the Kingston Cricket Club, where you're a member, made the comment to me that you are the oldest living West Indies representative who is a member of the club.
Really?
And of course, I think you're the third oldest West Indian representative in the region around today. So that's a massive.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's an awesome thing, sir. That's an awesome thing because you, I believe, are a repository of history. Please like, subscribe, and share, and comment to let us know what you're thinking. It all started for you at, cricket-wise, at the Wilmer Boys' School, the oldest educational institution in Jamaica.
1729.
1729. Tell me about your experiences there.
Well, I didn't know a thing about cricket because where I went as a prep school, all we did was football. We were off the halfway tree road, right behind or beside St. Andrew Girls' School. So their hockey field was where we used to play football. My father, who was he was a Kensington member, played minor cup for Kensington, was always down on me to, come and play cricket, and I did not take him on at all. I did not like cricket. It is only when I went to Wilmer's that the bug bit me, and ever since, I've never given it up.
As you said, Wilmer's was at a different location then.
No, Wilmer's was at the North Race Course.
It was always North Race Course?
No, when I was there, it was North Race Course.
But something happened before?
Oh, wait, it was down by the parish church, down in Kingston there. And then I think it was after the earthquake that Wilmer's was moved up to its present location, North Race Course, yes.
And you were at school with Edward Seaga, the former Prime Minister, the late Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Yes.
Tell me about your association with him at school.
Well, he was a bigger boy than I was, so in those days there wasn't too much interplay between the older ones. He was a prefect, I was not, and but he was a very good friend because we used to play every Saturday morning. Cricket wasn't on. We used to play tennis down at Wilmer's. George Lazarus, Eddie Seaga, and a fellow called Carl Lynn. We played tennis down there, and on the way home with bicycles, we would stop at Dairy Products, which was on the halfway tree road, right by Grove Road, and have malted milks or jumbo malts or whatever it is, and then we would pedal home.
But like yourself, Mr. Seaga was a wicketkeeper, correct?
Yes.
And Wilmer's has the distinction of producing so many Jamaica and West Indies wicketkeepers. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's just a matter of that's how it is. I don't know, because there were five of us, starting with Carl Nunes, Ivan Barrow, Jerry Alexander, myself, and Carlton Ball. Those were the five wicketkeepers.
And Jeffrey Dujon.
And Jeffrey, of course. How could I forget Jeffrey?
Sportsmanship, though, is something that was learned at high school at Wilmer's for you. And I remember in your book, you spoke about an event where you were reprimanded by
Jerry
Alexander.
Well, what had happened was that we were playing a house match, Harrison, which was my house, against Patterson. We bowled them out for about 35 or somewhere there. And in those days, we were given house points for 50 and 100. And so I went for the house points. And I got to 95 and got out. And very pleased with myself. I'd earned 5 house points. The next day at school, Alexander called me. And he remonstrated with me about how that's not cricket. He said, you should have come in after you passed the score. And he took away the house points from me, which was very, very sad to me, as you can imagine. But it taught me a big lesson, you know, that how cricket is played. And we have respected that ever since.
Talk about your family, sir. I'm going to be presumptuous and say you're a child of privilege in Jamaica.
Yes, I would not deny that.
And your father rose to be a senior civil servant in the colonial...
Well, my father was born in Porus. His family had a property there called Ramble, and he came to Kingston in the medical field, and then he turned to income tax. And he was eventually the Commissioner of Income Tax, which was then on North Street, on Tower Street, and he was a great lover of cricket. And as I said, he tried his best to get me to play cricket earlier on, but it's not really until I went to Wilmer's and I saw how well things were arranged that I sold my heart to cricket, or gave my heart to cricket, and this has been so ever since.
Then you went on to join Kingston Cricket Club through your association with Wilmer's, and
well, Reggie Scarlett and myself.
Yeah.
Reggie was our sunlight representative at Wilmer's, and Johnny Groves, who was then the captain of Kingston, he used to come and look around for youngsters, you know. And he introduced Reggie and myself to Kingston Cricket Club, and which was a wonderful thing for us because, you know, there were so many opportunities. So I must say, yes, I was a privileged person.
And through playing for the club and playing against other clubs in the corporate area and in Jamaica, you made associations and friendships. And one of them that you wrote about in your book, which we're going to talk about later, by the way, is the late great Collie Smith.
Oh yes, Collie. Well, we played against each other for Sunlight Cup. He for Kingston College and I for Wilmer's. And after that, we became very, very good friends. And I remember we went to India together. We became very close, and in fact when he was playing for Burnley in England in Lancashire League, and we used to correspond a lot, and I think it was in the August or so, we were to go to Australia, and Collie wrote me a letter saying how much he was looking forward to Australia and for us to be there and blah blah blah, and a month later, the accident took place and Collie was gone, you know, and it was very, very sad. Because
well, my generation never saw him, never knew Collie Smith. We only heard about the legend of Collie Smith. Was he that great of a talent, as people say he was?
He was a fine all-rounder in cricket. He was a devil-may-care batter. If a batsman, I don't hate the word batter these days. He was a devil-may-care batsman, and he was a very, very popular young cricketer. And he got into the way. I personally think, had he lived, that he would have become the captain of the West Indies team, but that's you know. But it was so sad when that September when the accident took place, and you know, he was a very dear friend. and a wonderful fellow. I mean, on tour, if your shirt button came off, he would be the first person to say, "Let me sew it back on for you." He was really a wonderful little fellow, and it was a terrible loss for not only for cricket but for his friends. And
in your early days of representing Jamaica, there were very few inter-regional games, very few games between the territories, between Jamaica and Barbados. And
there was a Shell Shield.
Before that, though, in your early days.
Well, before that we had the odd. There was a competition between the four major Guyana, British Guyana, I think in those days, Trinidad, Barbados, and ourselves. And it was a knockout. So if you lost your first match, that was the end of your first-class cricket for the season. And eventually, in 1966, Shell Company sponsored the proper, what we call the Shell Shield, and it was a marvelous competition. And I think that it bred a lot of young cricketers who became into West Indies, Jamaica and West Indies representation.
But how did cricketers, before the Shell Shield, how did cricketers hone their skills, became really good at their craft, not being able to travel and play as much as they did with the Shell Shield and after?
Well, as I said, Shell Shield started in '66, but there used to be matches between the four major, in those days, the major the countries, and it was not satisfactory really. The Shell Company made a wonderful contribution to cricket, and I can remember how enthusiastic everybody was about the Shell Shield, and it made, I think, one of the biggest difference, I think, in our cricket, because you had so much opportunity now to play against all the islands, and then eventually the Leeward and Windwards played as combined islands, and then they split, and we had the full complement.
So, in your senior year, sir, you wrote a book.
Yes.
Stumped for a title.
Stumped for a title, yes, that's quite right.
Which pretty much chronicled your life in cricket. And you spoke, well, one of the things that struck me in the book was how highly you thought of Roy Gilchrist as a fast bowler. You thought he was one of the best.
Well, he was certainly very, very quick. But there was always the doubt about a little bit of his action. And, he managed to get through until umpire Sang-Hugh Douglas. He was the one, I think, that called Gilly down. We were playing a trial match at Denon Geddes at the time. And Sang-Hugh called him several times, and I think that sort of did away with his as a fast bowler.
But not to give away too much of the book, there's a very funny story in there about Clive Lloyd making a remark. You don't have to say, but Clive Lloyd remembering a remark that Gilchrist made in a Shell Shield match to an opposing player. That I encourage people to buy this book and read it, because there's some really
well, I tried to put in the book as much as I could, about things. So, but I couldn't go too far.
I can imagine, but it's definitely worth the read. You had so much detail in the book, though, so much that it puts the reader inside of the game, I think. And I'm wondering, what was your method? How did you research the book, and how do you remember all this stuff?
Well, as far as cricket was concerned, I didn't forget a lot. I remembered much of my cricket life and other people's. and the great players that I came in contact with, and in fact, the two people who were instrumental in my writing the book were the late Pat Rousseau and my cousin Paul Levy, who now lives in Vancouver, and they forced me. I mean, it was do it or else, and they used to do the editing of it. Those two used to do the editing, and and we eventually managed to turn out a readable. I think it's a readable book.
It is compelling actually, because, and I've read a few cricket books in my time by Walsh, and Michael Manley had a very good one about the history of West Indies cricket,
yes,
and Lara and so on. But this one gets you inside of the game, the technicalities, some of the emotions you can feel about what was going on during the course of a game and a series.
Well, I'm very glad you had a good read. I mean, I was pushed into it, as I said, by Pat and my cousin, and I owe them a great deal for it, because they did the editing, and it made whatever suggested changes, and so I think it. I'm glad that I had the help of those two gentlemen.
So your selection to the West Indies team now was the tour of India '58, correct?
Yeah.
Your first selection.
Well, I was. I must. This is a part of it, part of my cricket, that I must say how much I was disappointed. In 1957, we had the trials in Trinidad, and I was the only person in the whole lot that didn't get a bat. I was very, thought, well, why? What's the thing? But I kept wicket for both sides and so and so. And to be very honest with you, when the team was announced, I was driving my car, the radio was on, and I heard the thing. And I must admit, I cried my heart out, because I thought that I was going to be, get into the team, and I shed many tears on that account. But the next year, I remember very, very well. I was at St Andrew Club watching tennis. I think it was Brandon Trophy tennis at the time. It was April the 1st. And somebody came to me, boy, congrats man, you're in the team, you're going to India. And it's April 1st. And I said, very funny, April Fool. And he said, no, here it is. And in those days it was a Daily Express. And he showed me, and there was it. So I can imagine the feeling that it overcame me to get onto the West Indies team. And I think it was somebody wrote a thing that said it was very unusual for two wicketkeepers to get on from the same island.
And that was
Jerry
Alexander.
Alexander, who was he was the captain.
No, you talked about playing on jute matting covered wickets.
Yes.
I don't know what that is. Explain to us.
It's jute or coir that is done into a matting, and that was in India. We ran into a lot of those types of the coir was taking spin a lot, whereas the jute was pretty. Trinidad used to play with jute matting up to 1955, I think it was, or 54. But in India we had several of those matting wickets, and the coir was very accepting its turn and movement from the fast bowlers. In fact, Fazl Mahmood, who was a very fine cricketer for Pakistan, he did marvelously well on the jute matting, and They had a little trick in India those days, in Pakistan really, where when we went to bat, they used to stretch the batting so the ball came on quicker and so on. And when they went to bat, they would have loosened the batting so that our fast bowler, Wes Hall, and so was minimally affected, you know. So that was one of the things that we noticed.
But it was a true surface to play on, though, did you?
Yes, it was quite true. But as I say, the speed of the ball,
yeah.
like fast bowlers, when you slackened it decreased their speed.
You were part of that famous tour of Australia in 1960-61.
I think it was the greatest test series of all times. That's me.
What struck me in the book, though, was that although you did not play in a test, did you?
No.
You were part of the squad.
Jerry Alexander played.
But you were so enthusiastic about the series and what West Indies accomplished. That just said to me that you are such a lover of the game, not necessarily having to play it. You just loved cricket.
Well, it was wonderful watching. I mean, you know, the cricket was of a high standard. And the players got along so very well together. Both sides. I mean, after a day's play, if they were in the field, we would go into their dressing room for drinks, and vice versa. When we were in the field, they would come into our dressing room. The friendships were tremendous, and of course at the time, they had some wonderful commentators, and who used to really love the game, and you know, it was a wonderful tour. There's nothing else that one can say. And when you think of the crowd at the end of it, when we were on the way from our hotel to the mayor's parlor, because the mayor wanted to say goodbye to us, there were about nearly 250,000 people lying the streets, and we were all put in open cars, and they were shouting and they were singing, "Will you come back again?" And it was I don't think there was a dry eye anywhere.
Wow. and of course, there's the tide test.
The
famous tide
that's the first
test.
one, the tide test,
yeah.
yes. And it was a tremendous series, and one of my most pleasant memories of it is my being able to sit with Don Bradman and talk with him, and we had bets. In other words, but he wouldn't bet more than 2 and 6pence. And one of the bets we had was in the tie test, when at one stage Australia were 95, I think 95 for 6. And I said, "Well, Sir Donald, it looks as if West Indies are going to take this one, eh?" And he said, "No, I don't think so." He says, I bet you half crown. 2 and 6pence. And it was a tie. So I said, "Well, you owe me 2 and 6pence. He says, "No, it was a tie."
That 1960-61 team, did it signal to you, the players, that you were on the verge of becoming a world-beating West Indies team, the first West Indies team to dominate cricket?
Well, it certainly was a wonderful team. And as I said, the series was, I think it was one of the greatest series of all times. Not only from the cricket point of view, but also the camaraderie between these two sides and so on. I remember, for example, at the end of the tide test at Brisbane, two teams were there until 11 o'clock at night. We were knocking back a few, and it was a wonderful experience. You know, the fact that the thing had turned into a tie, and both teams were so friendly. I don't know. I think it was a wonderful tour. I really do.
And that kind of camaraderie don't seem to exist anymore in world cricket. West Indies wouldn't nowadays go into Australia's dressing room. You made your test debut under the captaincy of Frank Worrell, late Sir Frank Worrell. What was that man like as a leader and as a cricketer?
Well, as a cricketer, he was one of the finest we have ever had. You know, the Weeks and the Worrell and the Walcotts were, catch names. I mean, around the place. And Frank was, I think, was the ultimate leader. I found him to be extremely good. He looked after his players, and I had the highest regard, certainly, for Everton as well. Everton to me was my second best batsman I've ever seen. First being G. Ciente Sobers. And I asked Everton once, we had a meeting, we were in the cricket committee of the West Indies board. And after the meeting was over, we were having a drink, and I said, Everton, do you remember that innings you played against Jamaica at Kensington? He says, no, the only thing I remember is somebody behind me saying, great shot, Everton.
That was you.
That was me.
But as a leader, though, I mean, Frank Worrell, he transcended cricket, didn't he?
Yes, he was excellent. He looked after his players, and he was a really what can I say? He was the ultimate, I would think, as a leader.
Because he came to Jamaica and became a senator, correct?
Yeah, he was at the university. Yeah. He was up at the UW. And he used to come here quite often in those days, come and sit down with Alan Ray and so on, who was a teammate of his, in England and so on. No, he was a great fella, and Everton to me was a wonderful cricketer, as was Clyde. I mean, you put them together and you have a team, a great team.
So he's out.
I guess so.
I remember the Mighty Sparrow. I mean, I was a young lad.
Yes.
But I remember the Mighty Sparrow song, Australia, you've lost, the West Indies is boss, the trophy belongs to us.
Yes.
You were a part of that team that defeated the great Australia.
1955, I think it was, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. When you became world champions?
55, I think?
65, was it? No?
65, you're right. It's 65. I'm sorry, my fault.
Yes. When you became unofficial world champions, having defeated Australia, and then went on to defeat England.
England, yes. And India as well.
Tell me about that team. Tell me about how you all came together as a unit from various different islands in the Caribbean to become this fantastic.
Well, we played a lot of cricket together in the early part before the Shell Shield. We got to know each other, and we had some wonderful players in that team. I mean, the Seymour Nurses, the Gary Sobers, the Rohan Kanais, and plus the bowlers, Wes Hall, Valentine, Ramadin, and Lance Gibbs came on afterwards, and was a superb bowler. We got along very well, and we respected each other's abilities, and I don't know. I was in a dreamland. That's all I can tell you at that time of my life,
And as a keeper, you suffered many injuries to your hand. You got hit while batting. Was it difficult to come back from these injuries and to play at the top level after that?
No, I couldn't wait to get back, actually. No, I got hit. Graham Mackenzie hit me in the head in Barbados. A bouncer which I maintained. It hit a patch in the pitch. I was told after Frank Worrell, when he was doing the commentary, the summary of the day, he said, "a tired bouncer," which I thought was a little unfair, unkind.
It was sharp. It was tired.
I thought so. I don't know. It hit something in the pitch and came quite steeply, you know. But Frank didn't think it was that serious, you know.
You know, because sometimes you hear that a cricketer, a batter or a batsman gets hit and he struggles with confidence, but that clearly didn't bother you on coming back after the injury.
No, I didn't. I mean, I remember in the nets right here one afternoon, Kingston practicing, when a fella called Maxie Henry was batting, and a young fella from the country, Manning's school, the old school's team from the country came here to play the Kingston schools on the weekend, on the Sunday, I think. And Alan Ray, who was at practice, he called him up and gave him a new ball, and Maxie was batting, and I thought this was a great opportunity to get some practice behind the stumps, you know. And about the third or fourth ball, he drew away from one and held the bat out, hit the top edge, and hit me right between the eyes, and of course, lot of blood came out, and I had to go to the hospital, Nuttall, where Dr. McNeil, he sewed me up. And
Ken McNeil, the later on Minister of Health, I believe.
That's exactly who.
Yeah.
And he did the necessary repairs.
In 1960, West Indies toured England, and the tour lasted from April until September. I mean, that's most of the year. That's almost half of the year.
It was, well, you played all the counties and test matches, plus at the end of that tour, 66, we had, it's the first one-day cricket that I ever played in, where the rest of the world, England and the West Indies, played at Lord's. This unique, I think. I don't think it ever happened before. And that's the first time I ever played limited over cricket, you know. 65 overs we did in those days. No field restrictions. You know, it was like a cricket match, because not many of them will really go 65 overs sometimes, you know. So it was wonderful, because you had some very fine players coming and playing, you know, rest of the world. So,
do you think that those longer tours with more tour matches, preparing for a test, make the players better than they are now?
I certainly do. I certainly do. I think that you get to understand the circumstances and the different climatic conditions and everything. Especially in England, it was, you know, you had to get accustomed to a warm morning and then a cold afternoon, you know what I mean? But it was a wonderful experience, and what can one say other than thank God for that?
But why is that not the case anymore? I mean,
well, I suppose there's too much cricket being played. I don't know. I really don't know. But I think it has spoiled some of the attraction of the game. That's my feeling, anyway.
You noted in the book that you think that if better pitches were prepared all around, let's say, the Caribbean, that we would produce better batters, better batsmen.
But that, definitely, without a question. Without a question. The batsmen learn to bat on good pitches, and they learn to play their shots and so on. And I totally agree. I totally agree with that. No, what we used to have, the Shell Shield, which started in 1966, was a wonderful introduction for players. They played a match against each of the territories, and both home and away, you know. And I thought that was one of the underpinning of our cricket. It was allowed you to play in all different conditions and against all, you know, different type of bowlers and so on. And I was very saddened when the Shell Shield was and then they had a red stripe, I think, after that. And then after that, things didn't go so well, you know. But the Shell Shield to me was one of the things that created a lot of West Indies fine players. It was a great competition.
You mentioned that you worked at the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation.
Yes.
Tell me about that experience.
Oh, I was there. I was a sales manager for television. So I was there from about, 1962 till 69, 68, 69, somewhere there. And selling advertising around Kingston mostly to the advertising agents, you know. And it was very enjoyable. And then come 90, I think it was 69. Yes, it would have been, when the then manager of Sports and Games on Church Street, DeCosta, he died on the Easter. And I remember very clearly Jerry Gomez, who was became a very dear friend of mine, invited me to come on and be on the managing the Jamaican thing, and it was wonderful. I enjoyed that immensely, and I think it was so, I don't know, it was such a great cricket oriented thing, and you know, and it was wonderful.
And you had the distinction, of course, of playing on a world-beating team and of managing a world-beating team.
Yes.
Where your teammate, as a young Clive was your teammate, and then he became captain and you manager. What are some of the duties and special skills that a manager of an international cricket team needs to have?
Wow. Well,
I need to carry out as well.
Obviously, to look after the players, make sure that everybody is happy and, you know, fit and so on, and you know, generally you look after them for the duration of the tour, and I found them so. I mean, they were very fine fellas. They were wonderful cricketers, and good. Desmond Haynes and these fellas were very charming people, and you know, it was an enjoyable experience, to put it that way.
You never played professionally,
no,
did you?
No.
Well, why not?
No, I had a job. I had a job at JBC for that of it, and I remember going to England in 1966, and it ended in September, and then we were to have a tour of India in the November, December, January period, and somebody, I remember was right here upstairs at lunch, somebody said to me, well, it looks as if you're not going to be able to go to India because of the time you've been away with England and so on. And I had been given that clue from the then general manager, who was Harvey Eniver, that it would be dicey to get. And Bob Lightburn, who was at the table, Bob says, nonsense. He says, you are going to India. So with that assurance, it made me very happy.
You got in the administration, you got involved in the Jamaica Cricket Board and the West Indies Cricket Board of Control. But West Indies has always, I don't know about now, but back certainly when I was watching cricket and listening to cricket on the radio, insularity was a factor between the various territories.
It was apparent in some instances, yes.
And you yourself as a player was a victim. Well, you think it could be insularity when someone told a lie and that lie prevented you from playing.
Well, it was. I was injured for the first Test match because I got this finger here, and I went and did a stupid thing because we were playing a county game before the first Test, and I was standing back, obviously, and then Gary said to me, "What's wrong with him? You know, he's not." So I said, I'm going to fix the business. So I went up to behind the stumps. And of course that spurred him on and he shoo, shoo. And then I got this finger here damaged. So I wasn't able to play the first Test. And I got over it quite quickly and played the next game in Sussex before the game before the second Test. And when the team, I remember I was in the dressing room at Lord's, finishing practice, and I was combing my hair, and I looked down and I saw a list on the table. Didn't see my name, so I figured, and I was given to understand later on at the end of the tour that somebody had said, one of the fellows had said that he had spoken to me and that I said my finger wasn't fit, which was not so at all.
And you went on to make a big contribution with the West Indies Cricket Board of Control at the time as it was.
But before you go there, I just want to say how wonderful it was for me to be playing in the West Indies team at that time, to be playing with Gary Sobers, and Seymour Nurse and all these fellows, Wes Hall, Lance Gibbs. It was one of the greatest experiences one could ever hope for. And I know, Gary, I felt when going out on the field with Gary as the captain, I felt that we were going with 13 men, because Sobers did everything. He batted, fielded, bowled, everything. And it was a wonderful experience. And Seymour Nurse, who I consider to be one of our West Indies great players, was a fantastic batsman. And you know, it was such a wonderful, it's a treat to go out in the field with these fellows. It was marvelous.
Tell me about your time in administration. Pat Rousseau at one point was the president of the West Indies Cricket Board of Control.
A very, very good president too.
And he was, of course, instrumental in trying to commercialize.
When he was actually before he was on the board, he was in this salesman selling West Indies cricket. He and
Marketing. He was involved in marketing.
Yes, he and Daring, Chris Daring, and so on. They were looking after the marketing of the board of the cricket, you know. But Pat became a very, very good president in my view, and I was very disappointed when he decided to quit. Unfortunately, some members of the board were very unfair to him. And he decided to pack it in, and which was a very, very sad, because he was very, very good in my view.
You know, you played with, as you said, with legends of the game, Sobers and Hall and Griffith and
Seymour Nurse, don't forget him.
Lance Gibbs. I mean, it's a roll call of the West Indies
Conrad
Hall
Hunter,
of Fame.
yes.
Do you have any regrets about your time playing for West Indies?
No, I just figured I was very lucky, you know, to be put in a team with all those great players. You know, as I said, going out on the field with Sobers was like 13 men, you know, and what can I say? It was a wonderful experience.
Is there anything you would do differently looking back?
With me,
Yeah.
what I would do?
Yeah.
Not a thing. I can't think of anything I would do, honestly. My greatest regret, as I said before, one of my greatest regrets is that I never got selected for the 1958 team. When I heard the team, I really cried. I cried living eye water, believe me.
Well, sir, it's been an honor. A great interview, enlightening interview. And of course, your book, Stumped for a Title, is a great read and I recommend
I'm very,
it.
very glad you thought it was.
And you've been getting some good reviews, I gather.
Yes, there's a fellow in England, Goodwin his name. He wrote a very complimentary email, and he promised to, in his podcast, that he would, circulate it and get people would be prepared to invest in one of these books,
Well, sir, it has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time. And
it's a cricket. I am always available for cricket.
And I hope you have a good afternoon and a better time to watch some cricket here.
Thank you so much.
Versus
Thank
Guyana.
you so very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.